All right, so again, this is the CLS workshop for fall of 2022, and I'm interested in hearing which languages y'all are most interested in studying. Let's see who we got in here. All right, Portuguese, dream job, international trade representative, very cool. Mandarin, in the interest of working in venture capital on the mainland. Studying Chinese, dream job in history, research, and writing. Another Mandarin, tenure track position in linguistics in southern China, very cool. Arabic, international nonprofits and human rights, awesome. Arabic to work with refugees, great. Well, y'all are in the right place. Indonesian, awesome. Russian, foreign service, we'll talk more about that. Museum studies, academia. Hindi, immigration law. Turkish, Chinese, US government or doctor. Japanese, archaeology, very cool. Turkish, and maybe we'll figure it out later. Arabic, Latin, okay. Medieval philosophy. Actually, one of the people on my program went to Cambridge, I think, for her PhD after she got her Arabic in, and that was really helpful for her PhD. So again, in the right place. Spanish and Japanese, working in forensic psychology, very cool. Yeah, so as you can see, CLS covers a lot of different interest areas and a lot of different career paths and interests all relate to languages in different ways. So as you'll see kind of in the diversity in this room, there's also a big diversity in the cohorts that you'll be a part of should you be awarded CLS. So definitely any major primary interest is studying language so that you can accomplish your goals. Swahili, something with literacy, very cool. All right. So let's do just a quick CLS overview. I know y'all have probably been combing the website, reading everything, but I just wanted to highlight some of the most important points that we're going to cover. And then, of course, you can ask questions in the chat or raise your hand as we go through these if you have additional questions. So program overview. So CLS is an 8 to 10 week, fully funded, language intensive summer program. That's a mouthful. You have to say it 3 times fast to get the award. And so what that is it is a cohorted language learning program. You're basically learning language all day, every day, and using it when you're not in the classroom. And it's fully funded. So basically from the time you leave the United States to the time you return to the United States, that is all paid for. You don't have to worry about food, lodging, anything unless you want to buy a lot of souvenirs. And these programs are specific to 14 critical need languages. So some of these languages do not have prerequisites, some of them do. It really depends on how widely taught they are. So critical need languages are identified as being of critical interest to the United States, and also identify that not enough Americans speak these languages. So this is an opportunity for you as Americans to go out and to learn these understudied languages and bring that knowledge back here or put it back out into the world in the foreign service or wherever else you may end up after your program and in your life. So for those of you who are looking to study Chinese or Japanese, they do require that you have 2 years or the equivalent of college level instruction. So that's 4 semesters of a language, Chinese or Japanese. And this is by program start date. So if you're applying now for summer 2023, you would want to have your 2 years of study wrapped up in May of 2023. So before your program starts. For Arabic, Korean, and Russian, 1 year of study is required to get you those basics. And then CLS begins at the advanced beginner level. No previous experience required. So these are the languages that you don't have to have had any exposure to prior to the program. However, of course, as with any application for CLS, you want to make sure that you're connecting your interests in the language and the region to what you're hoping to do later on. This is something that they want you to continue. This is a starting point, not a standalone experience. So Azerbaijani, Bangla, Hindi, Indonesian, I realized I didn't correct this from earlier, Persian, Portuguese, Swahili, Turkish, and Urdu, unfortunately, is no longer offered. So substitute Persian for Urdu, and you have those. All right, we have some questions. What counts as an equivalent? So with the CLS application, they ask you to kind of self-identify what your language level is. There is a document, and I'll show you kind of the secret hidden part of the website where all the good information is stored, like that, like language levels and prerequisites, things like that. And with that, it actually gives you some guidance as to what they consider advanced beginner, intermediate for these different languages. And if in doubt, what I would recommend, especially if you are studying one of the languages that has a prerequisite, is to check in with a professor here on campus and just ask them to talk with you for a few minutes, and they can usually give an assessment of where they think you are. So that is something that you will self-assess in the application process. If you are selected, then you will be given a proficiency test before you start on your program. And then is Spanish a language that's included within the program? Unfortunately not. Critical need languages tend to be those that are less commonly taught language is the kind of official phrase for that, but basically languages that are not French, Spanish, German, those kind of European languages that are commonly taught in the US, and people tend to study those and have opportunity to do so without special programs designed for that. So Spanish is not one of the languages that's included in this fellowship. However, there are a ton of fellowships out there. So I would encourage you to take a look at our info database, which is, oh, never mind. Thank you, Matt. Urdu is still offered. Punjabi has been discontinued. That's what I did. I took out Persian and Punjabi instead of just Punjabi. Thank you, Matt. And so if you're interested in studying Spanish, we should definitely still have a conversation. CLS will probably not be your funding mechanism unless you want to study something else other than Spanish, one of these languages. But there are plenty of opportunities for you to get funding to study abroad and study language. So definitely don't count yourself out. It just may be that CLS is not the mechanism for you. And I will note with these critical need languages, so they say, oh, 2 years of study. All of these different language institutes, they have a range of proficiencies that they're looking for. So they will cover from like beginner, advanced beginner, intermediate to advanced, depending on the language. And what that means is that they have some spots reserved for true beginners, advanced beginners, and so on and so forth for each of the levels that they offer for that particular language. So it won't be, if you apply for CLS, it won't be as if you are an absolute beginner in Azerbaijani going up against someone who is advanced in the language. They actually will evaluate you with other people who have your same language level. So just to clarify on that. Application requirements. So CLS is actually kind of a deceptively short application, which in some ways is great. It's kind of, I wouldn't say quick and easy, but like it's a very straightforward application. However, you do have to cram a lot of information into a very small space. You have 3 short answer essays. I've actually updated that from last year. They took away one of the essays, consolidated it. So there are 3 short answer essay questions. And when we say short answer, we mean like 200 to 300 words, short answer questions about your resiliency, your language preparation, and your what you'll contribute to the cohort. So they ask you those 3 questions, and then they also have you do a statement of purpose. So that's a little bit longer at 500 words. And that is saying who you are, why you're interested in the language, why you're interested in CLS, and what you hope to do with the language, both in the program and in your future career. So those are kind of the bulk of your application, as well as a transcript. You do not need a letter of recommendation. They actually removed that requirement because they really want folks who are beginning in this language. So if you are a freshman and you're new to campus and haven't built those faculty relationships yet, that's absolutely not a problem. You can continue to work on that while you apply for CLS. You don't have to have a letter of recommendation. I will note, one thing I didn't put on here is the kind of requirements or eligibility requirements. You do have to be a US citizen because it is a State Department funded program. You do have to be enrolled in a full-time degree seeking program. That can be from undergrad, master's, PhD. If you are still enrolled in the program full-time, you are eligible for CLS. And that's at the time of application. So folks who are planning to graduate in May, congratulations. And yes, you are still eligible. So that's kind of the main requirements for CLS. There's not really a GPA or any other requirements other than a good fit between what your goals are and the CLS program, what it's offering. The deadline is November 15th, so y'all have about a month to do your application, plenty of time. So I'm really glad y'all have started on this early. Note the time is 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's kind of an odd time to have your application due, but I would say as an advisor, please help me reduce my stress level and your stress level by not waiting until that November 15th application date to put in your application in the system. Historically, almost every system will do this. The application system tends to slow way down on the deadline date because there's a lot of traffic of people trying to put their information in. So if you can get yours done in advance, that'll save you stress, that'll save me stress, and everyone will be happy there. All right. So if you're looking for languages outside of this fellowship and another one like Spanish or Latin, Latin's an interesting one. So what I would do for that, if you go on our info website, and I'll show you where you can do that in a few minutes, then you can search by language study. You can see what places are available for language study and what languages that entails. If you're planning to go abroad, that would probably be the better way to fund Spanish would be to look at the funds for study abroad. So there's the Gilman, if you're eligible for Pell Grants, that's a great one. The Fund for Education Abroad, Freeman Asia, well, that one really helped with Spanish, but there are a couple more that you can investigate that would get you abroad, and then you could study your language internationally. If you're looking for postgraduate opportunities, so say you are looking at graduation in the next couple of years, NALCAP, which is the worst acronym in the world, is a really good one for Spanish. It is teaching English in Spain for 6 months to a year, and there's also other opportunities to teach English and do things along that line. So there are definitely opportunities, but CLS in particular, its goal is to focus on those critical need languages and getting folks higher levels of proficiency. All right, so what do you get when you apply for CLS or are funded for CLS? So again, the program is fully funded. So that is from departure from the US all the way through return to the US. It does exclude passport fees. So if you don't have a passport yet, definitely be looking at that. I think there is a passport fair coming up fairly soon. Hopefully it hasn't passed already, but that is going to be on the U of SC campus. Just Google passport fair, sc.edu, and you'll find it. But definitely getting a passport will be something that you want to plan for. And then any pre-travel healthcare fees, so vaccinations, COVID tests if necessary, things like that would be something that you want to set a little bit aside for. But from departure through return, all of that is paid for by the program. Excuse me. They do offer academic credit through Bryn Mawr University. And so that is something that you would get a transcript for. I'm not exactly sure how many credits come back because it kind of depends on what language level you reached, how long you studied. But that's something that you can work through with the registrar. And with this program, the goal is to get you a full year equivalent of academic study in those 8 to 10 weeks. So hopefully it would have had the equivalent of that academic credit for your language study. For those of you who are looking at government jobs, another really great benefit of CLS is that it gives you up to 3 years of non-competitive eligibility. So what does that mean? That means that you are basically not in the public pool for jobs, but in the smaller pool with other already federal employees. So you have a lot higher chance of getting into federal jobs. So that's a really, really good benefit for a few years after your program. And then you also get lifetime access to the alumni network. And of course, benefit learning a language. Awesome. Any questions on that quick overview? All right. So I will note, CLS is not a vacation. It is not something where you go and you relax and you just have a grand old time in Azerbaijan. This is an academic program. It is a rigorous program. Participants do have a very rigorous schedule. You'll be in class about 15 hours per week, plus homework, and then excursions that are planned with the group every weekend. So this is not something where you're going to have a lot of free time, independence to kind of do what you want, do extra travel. This is very much a cohorted program that is focused on language learning. So in the same vein as it's not a vacation, it is also not study abroad. So it is studying abroad, but if you think of like a traditional study abroad experience, this is different because it is an exclusive culture and language learning focus. As part of that, you will learn a little bit of history, a little bit of economics, a little bit of religion, all that good stuff. But your number one goal and priority is going to be learning that language. And so you won't be selecting from classes. You will be in language classes 24/7, basically. No independent travel before, during, or after the program. This is important to note if you were planning on like, oh, I want to go tour around India before I start my Hindi class. No, actually, they don't let you do that. So you would need to leave from the US and come back to the US, and all the travel you would do on the CLS program would be as part of the program scheduled travel. So definitely something that is very regimented, but again, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to plan anything. You just go and experience. Classmates are going to be other US students. So they pick cohorts from around the country, anywhere between like 5 and 20 students usually is the biggest ones they have. Usually happens in very small groups. And then you are with other US students from around the country. Your mentors and your instructors will often be local folks, so they will help you with your language learning, help you get used to the culture. So that's kind of how the structure works. So CLS is not vacation, it's not study abroad. It is intensive. So I've been talking a lot about kind of the rigor of this program. That is something to know going into it, and really like that's something you should want if you're applying for CLS, is that intensity of language learning, because it is a lot. It is equivalent of 1 year of academic study in 2 months. So definitely something that you'll want to know going into the CLS application. It will have extracurricular activities and excursions. I know when I was in Tunisia with my program, we each like picked a class. They had dance and drumming and calligraphy that you could do. After work, we had different after school. We had different excursions. We met with language partners. My host family would take me places. So you're definitely with a lot of people. So if you are an introvert and you know that people are a lot, just know that in advance and have a plan for how to deal with that. If you're an extrovert and you just love people, you're going to have a great time. You will be living with a host family as well. And that can look a lot of different ways depending on who you're paired with. It could be someone who has like 3 kids, a couple, an individual. It could look a lot of different ways. So you will be part of the host family, which is a great opportunity to see how people actually live in the country that you're traveling to. And then for most of the languages, especially those that you have that have a higher proficiency requirement before the program start, you actually sign a language pledge that you will speak only in the target language and minimize the use of English, except like in cases of emergency. So this is something that they really want you to practice the language, because the best way to learn how to speak is to not have another choice. So they do focus on that as well. CLS is also cohorted. The group is very important and integral to the CLS program design and experience. So thinking about what you bring to the group as an individual, and also what you're hoping to gain from others in the group. Again, these groups are quite small, groups of up to 20 participants from around the US, and those 20 participants are then divided into language levels. So you may have 2 or 3 people that you're working primarily with for a lot of your classes. So really intense, very kind of intimate program design. You'll get to know each other very well. And then again, standalone. So again, transportation directly to and from the host country. Do not stop, do not pass go. So just know that that's coming in advance. Then we had a question about travel and living with COVID-19. If you know, like, lend me your crystal ball and we'll tell you what it might look like in the summer of 2023. This is through the Department of State, so they have a really good handle on risk management, keeping an eye on COVID, making sure they're sending folks to places where they're going to have a safe and uninterrupted experience in the country. So they are definitely keeping an eye on that. With COVID, I think it would depend on where you were going and what was happening in the country at that time as to what precautions they would be taking for COVID-19. And I'm pretty sure they have FAQs on their website that would deal with what what would happen in case of COVID-19 outbreaks, or to address some of those kinds of concerns. I do know in 2020, they were really good about pivoting to online learning. And in fact, it was so successful, they actually kind of spun that off into its own online program called CLS Spark. So they do have that online capacity should there be something that would prevent travel to a country, whether that be COVID or, I don't know, something else, earthquakes, natural disasters, things like that. All right, so what else is CLS? CLS is fun, challenging, and effective. So this is Laurel in Azerbaijan. I think she's in Azerbaijan in this picture. She's actually still over there studying abroad. And I think, is Maeve here? I didn't see if Maeve was able to join us, but Maeve also was in Azerbaijan. They didn't actually know each other before they went. They were both from U of SC. So who knows, you might meet someone else while you're over there. And it's a lot of fun. You get to do different activities. You get to go to markets. And I know when I was there, like I went with my host family to a wedding. So it's something like you can really get to experience the culture. It's really fun. You get to know a different side of things. It is challenging though. Again, rigorous program, a year of study in 2 months. And these are languages, some of these languages are quite difficult for native speakers. So that's why it's so important to have that immersion in the culture, and being surrounded by the language community is really important. And so leaning into that challenge, like if you're hearing all this and getting really excited, this is the fellowship for you. If you're hearing this and you're about to cry, let's explore some options for how you can get your language study in a way that's going to be effective for you. So, and again, CLS is effective. I know I went from not being able to read Arabic, the alphabet, to an intermediate level of speaking and reading proficiency in 8 weeks. So it works. And it's really effective at helping you to learn language while also learning the cultural context of that particular language. All right. I didn't get to see Maeve. Are you here with us? Maeve is not here with us. She may join us later. So you will have to take my word for it. If Maeve comes, we will let her know. So any questions about what CLS is, what it isn't, and what the requirements are before we jump into this next section? Yes, Ruthann.
Hey, so this is sounding maybe more regimented than this would allow, but my partner is fluent in Chinese. Is there any possibility that he could, like, obviously pay his own way, but travel with me?
I would say you can ask them. I would anticipate the answer would probably be no. I would ask.
Okay, that's the vibe I was getting, but
yeah, that's what I asked for CLS. And I actually used to, before I was in fellowships, I did faculty-led study abroad, which was kind of similarly like a cohorted model of students who are going and doing different things together. And I know that it was always, well, it was never desirable to have partners coming on, because also like your partner's probably going to be bored because you'll be in class like all day.
He indeed would not, but I understand
that. Yeah, but also like with housing and things, like if he just wants to come and like be in the country while you are there, that's fine. You probably will not interact.
Yeah.
So
that's what I've been told by CLS as well in response to that question. You could basically be in the same country, but would have to be following all their regimentation.
Yeah. All right, good questions. I see in the chat. Super competitive. Yes. Well, yes, but so all these national fellowships, like, they are competitive by nature. There are only a certain amount of awards available, and a lot of people who want to take advantage of that funding. So by its nature, CLS is competitive, and yes, about 1 in 10 applicants will be awarded. That being said, I feel like fellowships are a lot more about fit and finding that fit than they are about numbers. If you're going into a fellowship trying to play a numbers game, it's probably not the fellowship for you. But it's all about telling your story in a really compelling way and making it clear to the people who are on the selection committee, like me and Matt, not this year, but in years past, that like why you want to do this, like what you bring to this particular program, why you were interested in like CLS in particular, the country that you're interested in particular, the language that you're interested in particular, and how you're going to use that later to accomplish your goals. So really the more specific and the more compelling you can be with your rationale for why you're doing what you're doing, the stronger your application will be. And again, kind of the competitiveness also varies across languages. If you go for like Korean, for example, that's a very competitive applicant pool. A lot of people are interested in Korean right now. And so that might be where you would have more folks who are interested in a smaller amount of awards. That being said, they do have two different offerings. So they're able to take a few more people for that. If you are interested in one of the more one of the other languages like Hindi or something, there may be a smaller applicant pool. I don't know. This is all like based on feel, but it will kind of vary a little bit within the language. But yeah, usually about 1 in 10. But I mean, they have to pick someone, and it might as well be you. So we're here to help you put forth your most competitive application for this program. I did this earlier, and I think it's possessed. So to go back to that, also through the application process itself, I know we say this, but also students tell us this, is that the process itself is really helpful. So especially if you are kind of working through what you want to do, what your goals are, it's a really great process to explore that and to really dig deep into, okay, what do I want out of life? Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? All those really big questions. A fellowship application is a really great vehicle for asking some of those and maybe finding some answers. Folks that have done these types of fellowships and then come out the other side with like, oh, now I understand I want to do bioinformatics rather than chemistry. There you go. So that could be something that could come out of it. It'll help set you up and give you practice for other types of fellowship applications. So if you're thinking of applying for another fellowship or grad school or jobs, like these are very transferable skills. So these are things that we as professionals, and I mean, we're biased, we work here, but we think these things are valuable regardless of outcome, and really winning the fellowship is like the last step in the process. So if you go into it with kind of that approach, I think that'll be helpful. It'll reduce your stress, hopefully. It'll help you kind of really see this as an opportunity to grow individually and to potentially get funding to do cool things. And it also helps if you are interested in these types of awards to have several different irons in the fire. So thinking about if you're interested in studying critical need languages, say you want to study Portuguese, CLS is one way to do that. Foreign is another. Gilman is another. There are other ways to access these kinds of opportunities. They're all kind of a different flavors, and they have different goals, and but a lot of them will get you to a similar outcome. So if you're interested in language learning, but you're like, I'm not sure if CLS is quite the right fit, please come and talk to us, because there are other fellowships that have, again, are in the same kind of fellowships family, but may have different aspects that you're more drawn to or where you would be a better fit for. So definitely not putting all those fellowship eggs in one basket is important as well. We can help you identify where else you should be putting them. So hopefully that answers that question. It's not your turn yet. All right. NFSP tips for crafting a strong application. So we have kind of our office's tips, and then we have tips directly from the critical language scholarship folks. So this will help you to think through what you can do to make your application the strongest that it can possibly be. So first off is to think about, what's the story you want to tell? This is a narrative that you're crafting. If you think of yourself as like a language learning superhero, what's your origin story? How did you get to be Spider-Man when you were Peter Parker 3 weeks ago? Like what was the process? What were those aha moments that really led you to this path and to this next step? And thinking about kind of how to communicate that. And you can do that by critically thinking about your past, your present, what you're doing right now to prepare for this program, your past, what's helped prepare you for this that you've experienced, and then your future. What are you going to do? How are you going to apply what you learn in this fellowship? So really thinking about past, present, future, where are the threads and how can you tie them together? All right. And thinking about this, like this is the time to brag about yourself. So in academia, I know there's a lot of royal we, very much like a kind of dispersal of responsibility that tends to be taught in writing. But this is the time to really use I, talk about yourself, talk about what you've done and what you're interested and passionate about, and thinking about maybe how a parent or a friend or a sibling would describe you. If you have trouble writing about yourself, that can be a really helpful kind of exercise to be like, oh, what would my mom say about me? And then you can kind of think about all the hopefully good things that they would share about you, and thinking about it from that lens. So really bragging about your accomplishments, talking about what you've done, and recognizing the value that you bring to this application and this program. And considering the overall message you want to convey. So if you think about the application, it's telling one whole story, and you want them to kind of walk away with something. So if you think about it, like what's the one thing that you want those reviewers to remember after they've read 50 other applications and they're like working on 3 hours sleep, what are they going to remember about you? What do you want them to take away? So thinking about that and really kind of tailoring your story to drive that point home. And kind of in line with the time to brag about yourself, use active, not passive voice. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard about the like by zombies test, but if you think about like active versus passive voice, so someone is doing the action or the action is being done by someone. So if you say, I go to the store, you can't put, I go to the store by zombies, that makes no sense. But if you say, I don't know, I'm always, it's hard to think of the passive voice example when you're thinking about it. But if you say like, I don't know, the sweater was purchased by them, like by zombies. Like you don't want zombies to be able to fit into your sentences. Hopefully someone's giving me a good example. Mistakes were made, yes, thank you. Yeah, so mistakes were made by zombies. I made a mistake by zombies. So thinking about that. Thank you so much, Ruthann. You can take my job here. Yes, so avoid the zombies if you can. Grammar, syntax, and punctuation do all matter. With our office, we have advisors, Matt and I, who are ready and willing to meet with you and talk about the content of your essay, the structure, and we're the kind of the fellowship experts, so we can help you with crafting an essay for a fellowships application. But we're not the only experts that you should be consulting. So thinking about grammar, syntax, punctuation, you might want to run your essays by the Writing Center just to do that kind of logistical check to make sure that all your commas are in the right place, you've used the right form of complements. I got caught by that one once, and thinking about how everything goes together. We'll do a little bit of that, but we tend to do a bit more content editing rather than line by line editing. But the more essays that you, or more people's eyes that you can get on the essay, the more likely you are to catch those things, and also to clarify that you're really communicating what you want to. So have us read it, have a professor read it, have your friend read it, have a parent read it, have the Writing Center read it, because the more you can get feedback on it, the more you can make sure that you're saying what you want to say and that that's being heard the way you want it to be heard. So definitely a good resource to take advantage of the folks around you. And it's so short, it'll be a very small time commitment. And then finally, be authentic. So in the fellowships world, there's been definitely a push towards reflecting the diversity of students, of the people who are applying, of America, because America is a very diverse place, not only racially, but with linguistic communities, with ethnic communities, in terms of visible and invisible disabilities, regional diversity, whether or not you come from a public or a private institution. So they're really looking to reflect that in the cohort that they're putting together. So thinking about kind of who you are and bringing that to the application. Don't tell us what you think we want to hear, because then you're going to sound a lot like other people, and we want you to sound like you. And we can help you with that through the advising process to really find that authentic voice and be able to tell your own story. So what does CLS say about crafting a strong application? So CLS, I recently attended a webinar, and they said that they should walk away from your application knowing 3 things. 1, how CLS connects to your future career. 2, why you specifically should be selected for this opportunity. And 3, how you will be a successful participant in this cohorted model. So we'll break that down a little bit, and then we'll move into kind of the more interactive portion of our workshop, and we'll dive a bit deeper into these smaller questions. So when you think about how CLS goes into your future career, if you're thinking of studying Portuguese, how does that connect with being an international economics officer? What's the connection there for you? What's your field of study? How can you relate it to that language? Be specific about your career goals. So it sounds like y'all have some good ideas. They're not going to come back to you in 10 years and be like, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do on this application. Give us your money back. Because I would definitely have had to give my money back because I'm not working in an international NGO. I'm here with you all. So definitely thinking about kind of what, as of right now, can you see yourself doing? So being specific, but knowing that there's room for growth and change for all people. We all are still figuring out what we want to be when we grow up. But thinking about that one step at a time, very helpful. How will you use your acquired cultural and language knowledge to contribute to your field? So if you're a biologist and you're studying Hindi, how are you going to be able to contribute to your field using that language and cultural knowledge that you're gaining? And then number 2, why should you specifically be selected? So again, this is all about what I call the fit funnel. It works for a lot of fellowships. So fellowships fit funnel, we'll say. So really think about like, why you? What is it about you, your passions, your experience, your skills that makes you a great fit for this program? Why did you choose this language specifically? What are you interested in? How does it connect? Why is this country of interest to you? How are you connecting to the region where this language is founded? Why is CLS the vehicle that you want to use to get to your language? So think of like, language is the goal, fellowships, CLS is a vehicle that you can use to get there, along with other ones. So why did you choose CLS? Why is CLS your brand of choice for your fellowship? So this is where you can talk about like, oh, if that like cohorted intensive model really attracts you, talk about that. So thinking about what makes you unique. And also, how are you going to fit in with the mission of the fellowship? So CLS and this Department of State is really interested in equipping folks with critical need languages so that you can build mutual understanding between the peoples of the US and the peoples of other countries. So they're really focused on relationship building and understanding. So how are you going to fit into that? So thinking about that as like your fit funnel, what you want to address as you're moving through the application. So what distinguishes you from other applicants? What unique background experience do you bring to the program? Are you really interested in like outdoor education and are interested in how that translates to Tanzania and West Swahili to figure that out? Hey, great. You don't have to be necessarily that specific, but thinking about what draws you to this program and what experience you bring to it. What are your biggest achievements? What are you most proud of? And how did they kind of connect with what you're trying to do? And then how will you represent the US and share your culture abroad? This is one that sometimes takes a little bit more reflection, thinking about like, what is your Americanness? What is your American identity? How do you interact with the world? And how would you take that interaction and translate it into an international context? How would you be a citizen ambassador is usually a term that they use. So how would you represent yourself, talk about yourself, share your culture and experiences internationally? And then finally, how will you be a successful participant? Again, CLS is all about that group. So what are you bringing to the group? How have you made use of available resources to study your target language? Have you been taking Russian classes every semester? Have you been participating in the Russian table through Maxi? If not, great opportunity. So how have you been doing that? Have you been like looking at Azerbaijan and finding videos on YouTube and maybe trying like a Duolingo app that you can use to learn a language? Like those are things that you can talk about what you've been doing to try and get familiar with the language, familiar with the culture before your program. That's always a helpful thing to include. How will you maintain your language learning? Again, I said I was going to talk about this. Definitely have a plan. My plan was to take classes at a nearby college because I was or a nearby university because I was a very small liberal arts college and didn't quite have the resources to offer Arabic. Unfortunately for me, I had to make a choice between Arabic and being in a choir that I was really proud of and excited to be in. So guess where I guess what I chose, and now I'm here not speaking Arabic. But making sure that you have a way to maintain that, whether it's through keeping in contact with folks you meet in the host country, finding a tutor, watching YouTube, taking other classes, getting connected with like a local community. Think through those things as you prepare your application. And then how will you adapt to studying in a new environment? What kind of study skills do you bring with you? What kind of tricks and tips and coping mechanisms do you use when you are getting used to something new, something fast-paced, something that's maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone? So really thinking about how you're going to adapt that environment. And then they do want you to talk about what you anticipate will be the challenges. And they want you to really give this some thought, to really think about, okay, what is going to be specifically challenging about this program for me? So for those of you who haven't traveled a lot, we hear like, oh, I'm afraid of getting lost a lot in like international travel, study abroad. Sorry, I'm here to break it to you. You're going to get lost. It'll be okay. That's definitely not going to be your biggest challenge, I hope. I mean, it would be nice if it was, but there probably will be other challenges along the way. Like for me, being around people all the time, 24/7, in class, at home, everywhere was just a lot. So that was probably my biggest challenge, was being able to keep up that energy without necessarily having dedicated alone time, and really trying to find opportunities to recharge my batteries. So things like that, thinking about things like that. Or if you're, I don't know, maybe not very proficient like orally, or maybe you're afraid to speak, thinking about ways and strategies that you will use to confront that challenge and move through it as you go through your program. So thinking about those things. That plan is something that should include a narrative. Yes, there will be a space where they will ask you about your language learning plans. And so you'll want to at least give a couple sentences. Again, characters and word counts are very precious in this application, but there is a space to talk about that. And that's what we'll help you with as advisors, is figuring out kind of where do things go and what do I include and what do I leave out and how does it all fit. That's something that we can definitely help you with. I would say as you're getting started, putting out like all the information you would want in your application, like just doing a brain dump and just putting it all on paper, making sure you have like everything listed out that you would want the reviewer to walk away with. Then going back and be like, oh, this sounds like I might vote for question 1 or question 2 or my statement of purpose. It's much easier to edit back than it is to try and add. So I would definitely recommend against editing yourself as you're writing. It usually isn't the best way to go to approach essay writing. So getting it all out there and then cutting back is a lot easier. And if you're someone who is more of like a verbal person where you can express yourself a lot better in speech than writing, consider recording yourself. That can be really helpful. And there are even like text-to-speech tools that you can use to turn that into writing, and that can help reflect some of like your authentic passion that might come out in speech as opposed to writing, or vice versa. All right, so this concludes our formal presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. We'll move into more of a Q&A and a little bit of workshopping